Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Office Visits with Dr. V. I usually give you my credentials of what type of physician I am, but this is really about just real talk, real life. And this is a memorial episode. One of my previous guests has gained her wings and has gone to heaven. And I really was inspired by her. So I just wanted to replay this episode in her honor. But first, I would just kind of like to give my thoughts on Dr. Zoe Stallings, what I learned from her, and what I learned a big lesson through our interaction. First of all, Dr. Zoe Stallings, she's a family medicine physician, but just a beautiful soul. When I met her, I felt a kindred spirit because she loved what she did, and she cared for her patients in a way that I cared for my patients, wanting to connect, wanting to partner, and wanting to educate. And she was a trailblazer, and she created a mobile clinic, and it was called the Must Clinic. And you'll hear all about it in the episode. But she had a Sprinter van, and it was a clinic on wheels. And her reputation preceded her. So I heard about this woman who could do a pap smear in a van. And I met her in a grocery store parking lot. I don't want to replay that. I don't want to say everything that's in the episode that's coming up, but she was very inspiring. And I labeled her as a fellow Harriet. I called myself the Harriet Tubman of healthcare because I've gotten free and I was coming back to get everybody else so they could be free too. And she felt like she was on the same mission. And so I called her a Harriet. She was my first guest of the year in 2022. Her episode aired January 3rd, and it was about balance and boundaries. And she gave us a lot of wisdom. But after that, I was still practicing full time, and I wanted to refer all of my patients to her. I like to partner with doctors who are of like mind and will give my patients great care. So I'm an OBGYN. I don't do general primary care. And so she was going to be my doctor. And a few months after the podcast, seriously, I had my mom that was going to be going to her, some family members that recommended patients, and they were calling saying she's not taking any patients, like she's out of the office. And then someone told me that she's on medical leave. And what I would soon learn, we were texting. So I would text her. I didn't hear anything back. And when I finally did, she shared with me that she had been in the fight of her life, and she was diagnosed with a very rare condition that I think she said only 20 people in the world had ever had. And it was a long journey, but she was making strides. And so for quite a while, we were planning to meet, but she would have to go back and forth for treatment. And so it was kind of hit or miss. And so there were several times that we set up appointments, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out. One of the last times I chatted with her, I texted with her, and normally I like to talk to people on the phone, but as I would learn, she was not able to really speak towards the end. But I learned that, she was like, well, you're going to have to come pick me up. And she lived right around the corner from me. What I regret is that we never had that lunch date. We never had that lunch date because her journey would intensify and she would need to move away to get very specialized care. And I was ready and prepared. I had bought this little doll. Can you see it? It was a Harriet Tubman doll. And I was going to give this to her because, she was spending time in the hospitals. And, I wanted her to have something to hold on to and to encourage her. And unfortunately, I never got the opportunity to present it to her. And that's one thing that I regret because I didn't realize that time was limited. And had I known, I would have done something different. And so that was a lesson that I learned, that we are not promised another day, another breath, and that we need to make the most of it while we are here. I will say, she was young. I think she was over the threshold of 40. I don't know how far over, but she was over that threshold. But in her short time here on earth, she had really made an impact and had really touched a lot of people. I was continuing to text her, and just a few weeks ago, her mother, gosh, it was a sad call. She says, I noticed that you've been texting Zoe's phone, and unfortunately, she passed away, and her funeral is this Saturday. And so it was up north. I wasn't able to go, and this was like a few days before. But what I know I can do is I can replay her episode, share her voice with you, share her wisdom with you that I know will continue to be heard. As long as there is a podcast platform, this will be heard and her family can hear it. She was a mother of 3. So, her absence here on earth is felt. And to any of those of her family members that is listening to this rebroadcast of her episode, just know that my prayers and thoughts are with you. And I'm so happy that you had such a wonderful spirit in your life for the time that you had her. So without further ado, here is a replay of Dr. Zoe Stallings' episode that aired January 2022, Balance and Boundaries. Hope you enjoy it.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following and just being here and present and willing to receive what we're putting out. I want you to stay connected with me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Office Visits with Dr. V. I have a website, and it's officevisitswithdrv.com. Officevisitswithdrv.com. You can keep up with me that way. And we will be putting out a weekly podcast. So if you will, go ahead and subscribe so that you'll be notified and you can get that episode as soon as it's available. If you will, please, too, just leave us a favorable rating if you've enjoyed what you've heard, or we also would love to hear your comments. And you can just put that on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify. So let's get into the episode. I have called myself the Harriet Tubman of healthcare because I have gotten free in some areas and I'm trying to come back and get other people and help them get free. And guys, I think I got another Harriet for you all today. I have another Harriet. Her name is Dr. Zoe Stallings. Dr. Zoe Stallings. And she is a board certified family medicine physician. And she is the owner and operator, medical director. She does it all for her clinic, the Must Clinic. That's all caps, MUST Clinic. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about that later. But let's just say hey to Dr. Zoe. Hi, Dr. Zoe.
Hi, Dr. B. Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. What do you prefer to be called?
So I kind of, they talk about branding, but I was always Dr. Stallings. Before that, I was Dr. Smith. So I decided that the one thing that will be consistent is Dr. Zoe. So I go by Dr. Zoe now.
Dr. Zoe, Dr. Zoe. Well, I just want to tell you, and she and I have had an extensive conversation in the parking lot of our local Harris Teeter.
Yeah.
Because just a quick backstory, that should have said there is this doctor who has this mobile clinic and she can do pap smears in the mobile clinic. And I was like, no, what? So I looked it up. I was like, okay. And so I'm driving one day, going to Harris Teeter, and she's parked there in her clinic van, or you'll tell me if I'm wrong on saying in your clinic. And I took a U-turn almost, like skirt, to go meet her. And guess what, y'all? She was putting groceries. She was shopping like everybody else. And, she was in her workout gear. And she was so down to earth. And she has so much to share with us. So I'm so glad that you're on with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a really impressive meeting because I had heard about you and I heard you retired. So I thought you'd be much older because the word on the street was that she retired. And I was like, was she retired? Okay. And that's how I ended up doing so many pap smears.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
patients would come to me and say, my gynecologist retired. I'm so devastated. You would really like her if you met her. Do you know her? And at that time, I was just thinking, and your name doesn't tell me that, we're so aligned. I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah. So I just did not know what to expect. And when I saw you in the parking lot, I thought the universe meant for us to,
Yeah.
yeah, because we've
Absolutely.
been moving in similar circles. So it's like, finally, we got to meet.
We got to connect. Absolutely. So, for our listeners, please tell us, who is Zoe Stallings?
All right. Thank you so much again. So I have to start with, my humble origins. So I'm a Jamaican who moved to the US. In Jamaica, the healthcare system is structured differently. Grew up with social medicine, then came to America and I saw all these different practices and I knew I wanted to be a physician. I just didn't know what that meant because I saw the hospital system and I saw the county system as a recent immigrant. That's where we got our healthcare. So I knew that I wanted to get into underserved care. And so I kind of aligned myself with grassroots foundations and got through medical school, went on to residency. So at this point, I left Chicago, where I moved from Jamaica and came to North Carolina. And in North Carolina, I realized that there are parts of North Carolina that had similar struggles to Jamaica, to be honest.
Yeah.
Parts of North Carolina where everybody has a PhD. And so it was kind of like this vast difference in socioeconomic status created a perfect place where you could take care of really and very affluent. But the thing is, people are just people.
Right.
So I started to work for a large health system in Greensboro and really enjoyed what I was doing. But I just really wanted to just stay on the job. I didn't necessarily want to get into leadership or anything like that. And I really enjoyed just bread and butter primary care. So that's like the beginning of my career.
So, that's the beginning of your career.
Yes.
But what you ended up creating and where you're practicing now is a game changer. First of all, tell us, why did you call your clinic the MUST, the Must Clinic?
So as I started in my brick and mortar role, I kept on having patients who never came in. I refill their metformin and never see them again. They want the refills. I can't give it. And I'm worried. I don't want you to go without, but you need to be seen. And so I started to ask patients, why can't you come in? Is it something I'm doing? You have insurance? And they would say, I don't have time. I really don't have time. So I started to think about doing this 2 years before the pandemic. So we're talking 2018.
Wow. Wow. You're ahead of the
Yes.
curve.
Yeah, 2018, I started to say, I wonder if I could, maybe I could reach them, maybe on the weekends, maybe at night. In that role of brick and mortar, though, there's very little space or time for extra, and I call it extracurricular activities. How do I get time as a full-time physician and also at this point, medical director? How do I get into those spaces? And where would I meet patients and how would I take care of them if I don't have a clinic for them to come to? And I have a clinic, they're just not coming. In that, I think that I call it metamorphosis because it started with an idea and it grew into something. The idea expanded as I kept having chance encounters. I'm walking my dog, I see a vet on the driveway, the vet is seeing his or her patient on the driveway. And I thought, why can't we do that?
Yeah.
It was planted there. And then, of course, our lives were completely shaken by the COVID pandemic. And during that time, everything shut down, but my practice kept going, practice where I worked, brick and mortar. As medical director, I met with my team. I said, listen, we may not get paid, but we need to keep patients out of the ER. That would be the best thing to do. So we made this, hodgepodge of virtual with, come into the parking lot, we'll see you. But in addition to everything shutting down, what that meant was I didn't have to take my kids to school. There were no movies to go to. There were no birthday parties for me to prepare for. And I had the space and time to really give thought to this acorn in my mind of meeting patients where they were. So it's really weird how the pandemic created the perfect opportunity to take a business idea into the next level. A patient of mine who's going through treatment is a business advisor, and I end up telling him my idea in a way of saying, I have this idea. You have to be careful who you tell your ideas to, because some people like a bug. So I had this crazy idea. I wanted to, start a mobile practice where I took care of people who never come in, barbers, security guards, bouncers, serving people or hostesses and servers at restaurants. And now that the pandemic is here, how do I do that? And that I will say that business advisor the guidance I received was so spot on. I knew very little about business or even how to structure an idea. And working with that person, this business advisor, Aaron Sims, he's somebody who really works with startups. So the ideas that I had weren't practical. So you kind of need that guidance.
Pie in the sky.
Passion. How do you work with passion? Passion can be volatile. How do you contain that and direct it into an idea? So it really took some guidance to, I just wanted to help people. So when it's how do you make money? I just want to help people. So getting into those questions and who will your ultimate patient be and how will you get certified? All those topics that I didn't want to touch on because I just wanted to help people needed to be addressed. And the pandemic created the perfect opportunity to do so.
You were ahead of the game. And by you preparing ahead of time, you were seamless. A lot of people were scrambling a lot of medical practices started to scramble because they didn't have any form of telemedicine and no form. And you had already kind of been doing the groundwork. So that was phenomenal.
It's tough to even think about what would I call it. So I had to literally try to find a way to explain to people because I knew that everyone would think I'm home health or I'm Dr. Skulls or, legally I can't enter the home. So what would I call it? So I said, well, I want to be mobile. So I said mobile. You can get some same day appointments or urgent, but I'm not an urgent care. And I want to tailor the care I give to each person individually. So I said, well, let's call it mobile urgent specialized treatment clinic. And then that's where the word must came from. I tried to find a way to explain who we are and what we're doing without having to pay a lot of money in advertising. Really small budget there.
Well, your van is phenomenal. And she really has like an exam table with syrups to provide a comfortable experience for the patients. And she's got her own face on the side of the van. So she's riding around town advertising as she's spreading all of these good things that she's doing. So the MUST stands for mobile, urgent, specialty or specialized. Specialized treatment. Awesome. So we're going to talk about boundaries and balance. And that's something that you talk about with your patients. But real quick, just for a little snippet, because I think this is where the Harriet part comes in. Just briefly, because I'm trying to help people find their purpose and have the courage to take action to do what their life was meant for. And that's sometimes hard. And, I heard a few things that you said, you care for people. You said we might not get paid, but we want to keep people out of the ER. So I know you care deeply, but the venue that I guess the brick and mortar wasn't necessarily where you ultimately landed, obviously. So just take us through just a little bit of your journey and how you took that leap of faith to go from, a big medical facility, brick and mortar, to this whole new concept of the MUST clinic, this mobile clinic.
So prior to the pandemic, it weighed on my mind. I really wanted to reach people and I didn't know how to. And I remember in high school, just learning that talking to people is a great way to figure out what the community would need. And I learned this kind of was reinforced in mid school as well. So what I would do as a person with an idea, I thought this idea is crazy. You kind of do have the self-doubt. That's inevitable. We'll doubt yourself. But I kept a little survey. I printed 200 surveys and I kept it in my purse. When I went to Target, I would say to the cashier, hey, can you just fill out the survey? I just want to know if you'd be interested in something I have to offer.
Wow.
I kept hearing people say, wait, you would come to my job? You have it now? Like they wanted to do it now. Then the next part of it was after doing those surveys and asking people, would you even go on a clinic in the parking lot? And overwhelmingly, I heard yes from the barbers, the cars. Every time I went somewhere, if I went to the car dealership to get my car serviced, asking them, and they'd all say, can you come tomorrow? And that made me realize that there is an interest.
There's a need.
There's a need. There is a need. And the kinds of people I talked to were people who were insured, but did not get time off Monday to Friday.
Right, right.
The next thing I needed to do, and with working with I would say work with someone who can advise you, because my passion and I think my talent is probably helping people. And I did not know business. I don't even know how to use Excel. I will say that out loud.
Wait.
Pardon word.
Did you know how to use Word though? Did you know?
I could use Word.
Okay, all right.
Yes, I'll use Word and PowerPoint. You know, we're not using Excel that much because I didn't do much research. I'm not an Excel master.
Right.
And in having conversations with people who they have the ability to help you structure a worksheet and structure what would it cost to start. But I keep saying to people, waiting for the right time and the right amount of money, you'll never get there. You literally have to just walk on, to step out on faith. Because when I got this sprinter, it just so happened that because of the pandemic, they had a surplus and I didn't have to pay anything for 3 months. The company I wanted to do the conversion were so backed up making COVID labs that they couldn't really fit me in until a year later. So I was able to get a tip to try the companies that make the ramps that you put in the minivans for wheelchairs. And that company, who ultimately local, Ilderton Dodge in High Point, they really said, hey, we haven't done many of these because they make the sheriff's vehicles and they make the ramps. But they hadn't gotten into the clinic world as yet. And they did one prototype for another company and said, we can work with you. So at that point, here it is. I'm taking a leap of faith in my own life. And the people around me are also stepping into new paths because of COVID. Like that, if you were to wait for the perfect opportunity to do something, it will be 15 years later. If you wait for enough money, enough time, your kids to get grown, for you to, get vested in your 401k, all those things.
Come on, Dr. Zoe. Come on.
So when you're stepping in and you have the idea, study yourself to see what is it that I'm going to bring to my idea. Is it suitable for my life? Because if you're not a detail-oriented person, don't pick up data entry. Don't do that. Study yourself and know your skill sets. But one of the things that made me jump was I was partially pushed, but I needed to jump. I felt as though if you build it, when Noah was charged with building the ark, there was no rain. No rain.
No.
So if you wait for rain to then build the ark, it's too late.
It's too late.
You have to really step out at a time when you can capitalize on being innovative. The idea, I initially thought maybe a Winnebago, maybe I could design something similar to what already existed, but I couldn't afford that. And also, many of the mobile clinics that you see are owned by a health system. So initially talking to insurance companies and talking to Health and Human Services, they're saying, what? Who are you? The fact that I was calling, I wasn't a credentialing officer. I wasn't HR. I was calling as like, hi, I'm Dr. Zoe Stallings and I want to start my clinic. And I would tell people, I rattle off what I'm trying to do. And they'd say, let me call you back. I need to find out if you can even do this. So I initially had to learn what it would take to start any business, learn what my business would need, and learn what's existing in the market. And there was no independent small business like this in the market.
Right.
So study yourself, study what's in your market, do some market research, find a business advisor, because if your talent is not business, you can really waste a lot of resources putting in steps that you don't need at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
I love how it's almost like you carried this dream with you. Like you had surveys in your purse.
Yes.
Like it was like a 24/7 thing. It was your baby. So I love that. So this is going to be a little unconventional because I'm sure people listening are like, where do I find Dr. Zoe? Before we get into the boundaries and balance conversation, how can they reach you, and are you taking new patients?
So I'm currently taking new patients, and our platforms that we use, LinkedIn, Instagram, we're on Twitter, and of course, Facebook. So it's all consistent at Must Clinic, MUSTCLINC. The best way is to go to our website, at mustclinic.health, not .com or .org, .health. There you can fill out your questionnaire where you can answer questions as to where you live, your general information about your insurance. We accept almost all payers except the military insurance. We're not taking Medicaid, but we do take Medicare. Our goal is to make sure we're matching with the right patients. So at the first call, you get an orientation into who we are and what we do. Because it might not be, some people may not want to be on a clinic in that setting. Some people like to have their labs drawn and everything done in one space. We economize on space, so we don't always bring all the equipment with us. And we partner with local, imaging facilities, local labs. We're using everybody in the best way possible to serve your needs. But you do get an orientation. So that first phone call will be a lengthy one to tell you about what we do, who we are, we serve,
Oh, I love
and how
it.
you can find us. Yeah.
I love it. Well, listeners, we will put all of her contact information in the show notes so that you can reach her after this. And you are currently only in Guilford County in North Carolina, correct?
I'm in Forsyth County as well. And because I do go out to Winston-Salem, and I also see patients right on the edge of, because I go to Burlington sometimes, so right on the cusp
Oh,
of
wow.
those counties. So I do have a few. Yeah. So it's a big area we serve. And patients, we occasionally go to Reedsville. Patients will often say, well, how will you see me if you're in Greensboro? I said, well, it depends. We are looking at a grid, and we look at the triad as a grid. And, some days, if there's something urgent, a car accident, and you need to be seen, you may have to meet us somewhere safely, of course. We meet people in between, and it works. We have I think our patient who's coming from Charlotte, it's probably traveling the furthest, but we have people who also come in from Raleigh and Durham to continue their care with me.
Wow. Wow. You are literally meeting them where they are.
Yes, absolutely.
I love it. And I often joke, as a physician, our hours are crazy. So sometimes we don't even have time to go to the doctor. We're overdoing our pap smears and mammograms. So
Absolutely.
I can't speak enough about what I think the service that you're providing and how you're so innovative and contributing to the field of medicine. Because I think we will see more mobile clinics run by physicians, and you're a solo provider. You're not with a big organization. And so I'm just so proud of you. It
Thank you.
takes a lot of courage to do that. I know you care passionately. I know we've had great conversations about what you see for your patients and how you educate them. And I know that you're on a personal journey too to also get healthy and well. Your Instagram is amazing. You got to go to her Instagram. Like, I was sharing some stuff from your Instagram.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
so tell us, because I always ask, I like people when they come on to the podcast to talk about something they enjoy talking about or something they're passionate about. And you said you wanted to talk about, boundaries and balance. So
Yes.
so tell us, what are boundaries and what is balance, and how does that impact our health?
I will say boundaries was something that I was very terrible at, because in my childhood, as a child, it's almost like you're not expected to have any boundaries. Your parents kind of dictate what you do, and they mean well, but we don't encourage and embrace boundaries. And then also as a Jamaican, where we live in a really small community, everybody's in your business. Boundaries are non-existent. So I'm learning more every day. I still haven't mastered it. But what I understand boundaries to be, like for me, I think of it as, imagine if a farmer has a lot of land. He has 3 acres. And there's a sign up that says, do not enter, I will shoot you on sight. But you don't know where the fence is. So you don't know where it begins or where it ends. And that's what happens. We sometimes get into emotional turmoil because people violate our boundaries, but we didn't even name them. Nobody knew these were boundaries.
Right.
You might have a mother-in-law who decides to visit you unexpectedly and didn't call first, and that's violating your boundaries. But how would she know? She knows you come to her house unexpected, so therefore that's not a boundary.
Done for her. Yeah.
I'm standing around in one of those Hobby Lobby type stores and see a book about boundaries, and the first chapter taught me so much. It's actually called Boundaries. It talks about how sometimes Christianity makes you terrible at boundaries because you feel as though, as a good Christian, I should always be available to help people all the time. As a physician, how dare I, say,
Yeah.
fuck you.
Yeah.
Even if I'm home with the kids and a family member who wants to go over what their doctor told them, run it by me, and I might not want to do it, but I'm going to do it. So what I've learned in the process of reading about boundaries is, first, I need to know what my boundaries are. What are the things that are important to me that I want to be respected? So it starts with identifying the things you want someone else to respect about you and your life.
Mm.
So to identify those, you explain to the people you care about, your people at work, you explain why these things are important and why you don't want to see these things violated. For instance, if you're at work and you don't like to eat out of a communal space, but you don't want to eat out of the potluck pot. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't want to eat out of the potluck pot and you don't want to be pressured into it. A lot of people will just skip the potluck. They'll call in sick because to them, I don't want to be pressured. I don't want to eat from a person's house. That violates my boundaries. I don't want to
Right.
have trust issues.
Right.
But being able to say to your manager, you know what, I really appreciate that we're having this bonding exercise, but if it's okay, I'm just going to bring my own lunch, but I want to be there for the activities and the camaraderie. I just don't. I have a lot of food allergies and I don't want to eat out of the communal pot. And by finding your boundaries, it gives people an idea that it's not really even about them. It's about you and what you need. Journey. And I was inspired by my older brother who has a lot of boundaries. And it's we always, I think of his boundaries as like playing Minesweeper. Like you step on,
Oh my God.
he has so many boundaries, and he would always struggle with getting our as a family for us to respect those boundaries because we would minimize his boundaries. So
Mhm.
with myself, I reflect and think, we used to laugh at him because he didn't like people touching or
Yeah.
about a lot of different things, and we just thought he was just that nitpicky person. But as I read more about boundaries and I had voice to name my own, I realized you have to consistently identify your boundaries and people will respect them once you educate them about what those boundaries are.
Right.
And for you to force your boundaries onto others, you just keep re-emphasizing and be consistent. And we struggle with that. Mothers, and I would say mothers struggle with it, teachers, all these
Yeah.
service in the healthcare. I mean, you name it. We don't know where to draw the line. And that's important to learn.
So, Dr. Zoe, how does that show up? And when our boundaries are violated, how does that show up in our health?
I will say there during the pandemic, especially when people were forced to change how they worked and they would receive instructions and every day something was changing, boundaries showed up as anxiety. Boundaries sometimes show up as high blood pressure, irritable bowel syndrome. Now you have this nauseous feeling. You feel like you're going to throw up or you feel like you might have diarrhea. What happens is when we have boundaries that are violated, especially when they're violated by your superiors in the workplace, for example, you may not want to speak up about it because you think it might jeopardize your job. So what happens is you feel this unrest, and that unrest can manifest in your body as high blood pressure, stress response, including panic attacks. And some people will say, I'm fine over the weekend, but the moment Sunday evening comes, I just start feeling sick. I have a migraine. And I drill down as a primary care doctor. I wear many hats. I'm a little psychologist too. But when I drill down into, so Sunday night, you start getting sick. How do you feel on Friday? I'm fine on Friday. And so what is the dynamic like at work? Well, the first thing we do Monday, we have a meeting and everybody wants to talk about their weekend. And I don't like to talk about my personal business. So already we're faced with
That's the boundary.
the boundary. It's Monday morning, you violated my boundaries. You just started the week off with violation. Way to express that to a supervisor would be, when I'm in meetings, I really like to jump right into the things you want me to address. It's very important that you give me feedback on how I worked last week. Sometimes when we talk about these personal things that I may not want to share at work, it takes me away from focusing on the task at hand. If it's possible, could we start the meeting with the work activities and just jump into the feedback, the plan, the project, and afterwards we can have a breakout session and those who want to stay can stay. Suggesting that whether it's written in an email or put it in the suggestion box or voicing it out loud, gives you an opportunity to jump into the work part that you want to do, but you can leave for the chit-chatting part that you don't want to do. So that's the thing. And I noticed that some people with the teams and they worked, they would feel as though I have to always jump on a call and Zoom because I did my work and I was done for the day, but somebody else didn't. So now we're stuck in this Zoom 1 hour call. So I saw more and more anxiety play out from people not voicing their boundaries.
Right. So two things that you just said. And you gave us a script. This is what you can say. This is how you can do it. I think we often tell patients, okay, this is what you need to do, but they don't know how. So thank you for that. The second thing that you said is, or that I'm getting from your conversation, is the root cause is not what we're seeing. Yes, you have high blood pressure. Yes, you're anxious, but there's something underneath all of that.
Exactly.
And so, I'm interested in lifestyle medicine and looking at, us as from a holistic perspective, and looking at all of us helps us figure out, okay, if I do some boundary work, then I maybe can come off my high blood pressure medicine.
Yes, absolutely.
Very simple, not simple. Nothing is ever that easy all the time, but something that is, I'm sure, overlooked quite a bit. What about balance? And how does that balance and boundaries? Those are somewhat similar, but they're not the same. Tell us more about balance.
So I think of balance itself is so hard to maintain. It's even hard to start to develop a plan of how to maintain a balanced life. We are in a society that applauds overachievers, constantly applauds overachievers. I would say that when I compare myself to some of my peers and they would reflect on what they did during the summer vacations, I just sat in a mango tree most of the time. When I was like 10, from 8 until about 10, my summers were lazy summers. And then from about 11 until 14, continued lazy. Every once in a while, I might go to vocational Bible school, but I really had nothing to do most of the summers. I would read books, I would explore, I'd hang out with my friends, and go see my cousins. That kind of aimless wandering was great because what it created for me was some balance. I learned social skills during the summer, but in a Jamaican elementary school, you're taking a lot of classes and the teachers are on you constantly. So the academic year is very busy. You're learning a lot. They're preparing you for an exam that you have to take to go to high school that determines the rest of your life. So by the time you're in 5th grade, you know which pathway you're going to take. When I moved to the US, I noticed that the summers were not that relaxing. Kids were doing tryouts for sports, and they were doing band camp, cheerleading camp, and some people were taking summer classes, and other people did enrichment programs. It was like the summer became an internship.
Yeah.
And if you were going to go to college, you need to have a busy summer. Get to college, people have to do all these things. So I noticed in teaching and working, because I think a lot of what I do is teaching, my college age students are coming in saying, I think I have attention deficit disorder. I asked them, well, okay, tell me about your day. Well, I wake up at 5:45 because I'm a sorority and we volunteer at at the breakfast program at the school. And then I go to my chemistry class and I go to biology, I go to Spanish, and I have my job. And I come back and I practice because wait a minute. You don't have attention deficit. You're overscheduled.
You're overscheduled.
You're overscheduled. There's no way your brain can keep attention that long. So in some situations, I've talked to people about the fact that if you have 3 jobs, when do you rest? When do you have your body's urges? When do you answer those? If you're working long jobs and taking overtime, how do you communicate with your spouse? When do you have time to be intimate? So my idea of balance is when you are able to give something to the different aspects of who you are. Because if you give it all at work, you don't have much at home. And the fact is, when we do our surveys about anxiety and depression, we usually ask them a question: how difficult has this made things for you at home or at work or with relationships?
Yeah.
The answers are usually not at all difficult, somewhat difficult, extremely difficult, very difficult. And what we're saying is the lack of balance creates difficulty in your relationships.
Right.
So what does balance look like? I know that as a busy mother, physician, community member, I think of it as I can only put out some of the fires. I can't put them all out.
Right.
Open smoke. And I have to give myself grace because I can't do it all. So the things that I can do, I give it my attention and then I'm okay, well, we'll try again tomorrow. But I need to go home and unplug because when I get home, my children don't understand that I need to chart and I might get audited and I need to talk to my CPA.
Right.
They just know that their mother needs to come help with this homework, dressed up like a Christmas present for Spirit Week. They don't really understand, and they shouldn't. They should feel as though when I'm with them, I'm with them.
Right, right.
So that balance comes from, how do I make all these things happen? How do I keep that equilibrium? If I need to give to my work family and I need to give to my home family and I need to give to my church family, well, your home family may have to go with you to the gym then. Your quality time might need to be in the gym if you're trying to. So my children work out with me because that's still spending time. They cook with me because now we're spending time. I'm still cooking and you're getting the salt out the pantry. Go and get me the seasoning.
Yeah.
Right? I just figure if I have to use that time to multitask, they're a part of the multitasking. Because that's, if I'm folding clothes, you fold the towels, I'll fold the rest. So I incorporate them into those activities. So I'm still spending time. And then once a week, we have a lazy day where we do a pajama day. We just pick movies and we're lazy. And I try to unplug that way.
How many children do you have, Dr. Zoe?
I have 3, and I'm gonna see if I can show you this little picture of them. He's there. They're now, but they are with a little
Yeah.
But now they are, oldest boy is 10, he'll be 11 the 30th. So not next week, but the week after. And then the middle girl, she's 7. And then the baby is 5. And what's interesting is they've only seen me, they know that I'm a physician, but for a long time, they thought that when I went to work, I was cooking and cleaning at work because that's what they thought taking care of people meant. And every time they came to my job, I was washing out Tupperware. So they really thought that I was the clinic cook. And then now that I've started this practice, they are, it's interesting because they understand ideas of marketing and promotion. And they'll say to me, Mommy, I want to be an entrepreneur like you when I grow up.
Yes. Yes. Mommy's an entrepreneur.
And
Mom is a physician, but she's an entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur. And, they understand the dynamic of, give me the time to do the work that I need to do so I can take care of you all. So if they see me on the phone, like if they walked in right now, they would have said, shh, she's on a call, she's a virtual call with a patient. So, yeah, they understand those dynamics because when I started my business, they would put flyers in people's mailboxes. So they've been involved from the inception.
So again, there's a how, getting our kids involved. And they're learning how to cook. They're learning how to fold laundry, things that they need to know because they're going to leave with that. You said your youngest is 5.
Yes.
And so you started working on this, 3 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah. So you had a 2-year-old.
I had a 2-year-old and I was going through and went through a divorce. And I will tell people that, some people when they go through a divorce, they eat ice cream and they cry. I listen to T.D. Jakes and 7 Habits of Highly
People, Stephen Covey, yeah.
Yes, a very impactful book. And also I listened to Nelson Mandela's. I listened to it on an audiobook because Nelson Mandela's story is one that will inspire anyone. Right. And one of the things that Nelson Mandela made me, think about was understanding who the enemy is. Sometimes we are so focused on getting even when when a relationship ends. And I realized he's not my enemy. His success is the success for my children. So
right.
So we never dragged out our divorce into like a malicious place. In fact, people didn't even know we were divorced. Some people would say, you two are happier than me, who's married. But I will say it took a lot of prayer and it took a lot of coaching from just listening to the word that's allowed me to use and also utilize developing this clinic as something positive. I'm one of those people. If I can't master something, I focus my energy on what I can master. And that's a big part of the time that I would normally put into calling people and gossiping and, bad mouthing my ex. I was on conference calls. I was sitting in on, lectures on Zoom about how do you grow your business. So yeah.
So look, get to work on your purpose, everybody listening. And you don't have time to get involved in that.
You don't, because if you get into a negative space, you will see and draw negativity.
Negativity. Yep. Yeah.
When I got into the
that.
space of building and growing and developing, I listened to TED Talks and I remember, Shonda Rhimes, who writes for, Grey's Anatomy, talks about the
Yeah.
year of
The year, yes.
yes.
I love it.
And I just started saying yes to random opportunities that came my way. But because I was already relying on God to put the right opportunities, my prayer was for discernment and for God to put the right people in my path. Hence why I met you, right?
Exactly.
Prayed for the right people in my path and I prayed for discernment. So I would identify what steps I needed to take. And with that prayer, really and truthfully, the right people came my way. It's been a blessing.
So I know that, your lifestyle is different or your beginnings were different than here in America. Like you all are a lot more laid back sometimes than we, but, with 3 small children going through a divorce, did you have to cultivate this environment of balance or you already had it and you just executed? Because I'm trying to think if anybody told me what you just told me,
Right.
they have any, I mean, it's like, okay, this is not the time necessarily to be starting a business.
Right.
Yet and still you went forward. So tell me how you did that.
I will have to say that I will call her my hidden blessing, but also my very visible blessing. If you're ever on my Instagram and you look and you see a lady there demonstrating exercises, that's my mom. I will say, she has been
Good.
truthfully a rock for me. My parents moved from Chicago because the winters were horrible and they came down to North Carolina. In the process, what that meant was my mother was on hand. And so my mother's my 3rd grade teacher as well. And if you have a Jamaican 3rd grade teacher in your household, I'm telling you, those kids, they didn't know, they didn't understand. I would say she ran the home in such a way that if I was exhausted, I didn't feel it. I didn't even know I was exhausted because the energy that she would bring was one of positivity. When I told her I was going to leave my job and do my business, she said, "You mad? I didn't like you mad. Where would the money come from? How are you going to pay your bills? You're crazy." And I told her, I said, "If you believe in me, just pray for me.
All right. Yeah.
Don't add doubt. Just add prayer. And I just ask you for your prayers." And I kept saying that to my family because, as a Jamaican, we're supposed to have 3 jobs. And I'm going down to 1 job and that job is not even secure.
Right.
The Jamaican mother was getting anxious. But I told her, I said, if you believe in me and understand that you raised me and I have this insight, this inkling inside that tells me it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Pray for me and pray with me. And so what that created was, instead of vocalizing their doubts, my father would send me a psalm to read. My mother would pray audibly so I could hear her. And, my family, my brother was such a believer. I will tell you that when you have family who think, even if they thought I was crazy behind closed doors, they really thought, well, let's just see how it goes. Interesting is I used up all of my family. Like my brother was was an actor in my commercial. My mother was the secret patient. Like my brother literally had to come and move equipment and also pretend to be patients in pictures. And when I did flyers, and he didn't even realize it was circulated that much.
Yeah.
Other brother in Texas, he was my angel investor. Whenever I couldn't make payroll, he would say, "Listen, all right, how much you need?" Because I really put so much of my resources into the business because I did not want a loan from the bank. I didn't want to go to a big health system to be bought out. I wanted this to stay organic and grassroots. And that way I could still practice medicine how I chose. So I needed funding and I went local. I went small for that. So family funded and just supported as well by family. And if you don't have those family members, let's say that you're from a family that might be a little bit more, dysfunctional and chaotic and you can't get that, build it. You could build it through networking.
Right.
I can name 6 people that I work with now very closely and are my friends that I've never met in real life, just from being on Zoom meetings, Clubhouse, networking, being in the rooms and talking to people, even on Instagram. And these are people who not just promote me because they believe in what I'm doing, but they also share ideas and I've never met them in real life. So I would say that you build your village if you weren't born into that village, you can build it.
Right. That was my next question, because I know somebody's listening like, my brother doesn't have a
Right.
dollar to give me.
Right.
So yeah, so thank you for that. I think, and I'm a believer, and I don't know how I could have stepped out not knowing that God was behind, or he was ordering my steps.
Right.
It makes a huge difference. And I think that, you know, he wants more for us. He just wants more for that. Overscheduled anxiety, panic attacks, that's not his best.
Exactly.
And it's funny, you said what your mom said, are you mad? I talk about when I went back to work after, pseudo retiring, and I went back to what I was doing, and I was like, you were crazy. Like,
Right. Right.
what the heck were you doing? You had no time, and definitely not very balanced. So I think that the balance, the boundaries are very important, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur. And for some of us, living our purpose is going to be, we're going to have to create something new, as you have just said. What do you want to leave us with? One little nugget. You got a whole bunch.
I know. I was like, and I'm long-winded. Okay. I think that one of the things I want to empower people to understand is it's important to see the steps that someone takes in their journey. We see the finished product all the time. We see Jennifer Hudson singing and winning Oscars.
Right.
But did you see her when she was on America? I think when we see people with a finished product, you don't want to pay people for the rite of passage, meaning the respect that they might need or giving them the compliment. It's okay to reach out to someone and say, I like what you're doing. How did you do it? Do you have time for just a quick call, especially if you're in college and you're trying to figure out what's next? And for college age students, this is a stressful time. The world there's a lot of unknowns. Do I have a job? How will I do things? If regular people are leaving their jobs, how do I need to know where to go? So it's important to be okay. And especially I think when I'm speaking to the Black community, it's okay to be vulnerable and put ourselves out there and network and talk about real things. Asking someone who is doing something that you like to do, asking them for an opportunity. Let me volunteer. Let me learn from you. How can I be your virtual assistant? These are things that you can do to A, put you in the right environment, B, help you learn from people who are really doing it. But what you don't want to do is sit back and say, nobody ever taught me. You don't want to sit back and say, well, I can get a scholarship to get into this program. You really want to step out on faith, but also utilize what's in your community. And so if that means that you want to go into music, you want to be a music producer, there's a mega church in Greensboro that is cutting albums. But
Right.
they're not cutting, they're just not rap albums, it's the gospel. But if you look at the switchboard that they use, it's the same that you'd find in Puppet Studio. They're mixing sounds for the choir when the choir sings. And when the pastor comes on, they turn down that microphone.
Yeah.
Start there, because the fact is, by you serving in church, you're learning technical skills. A lot of big churches now are recording and broadcasting live. And the church can benefit from your free labor, which you are learning. And within that church, the parishioners have businesses. You can network that way. But you can't sit back and wait for Puffy to answer your DM. He's not going to do it, okay?
Puffy, where you at, Puffy?
Puffy, right?
That's
Start
all
where you
right.
are. So my advice is start where you are.
Start.
Resources in your own community. If you want to be a psychotherapist and, you're just not sure what to do and your mom is sick and you can't really leave home, there are online rooms where people have spaces. People are on TikTok getting therapy. Okay. So
Right.
if you say, I want to lose weight, but I can't afford a personal trainer, YouTube has 100 videos, certified personal trainers.
Yeah.
They're showcasing what they're doing for free. So I keep saying, stop saying I can't do and I can't find. Just look around where you are and use all those resources. First, start with the free things you can get. Start with the things you can give for free until you get to where you are.
Right. Okay. 2 things I'll say. My accountability partner, Yolanda Greer, she says, inspiration follows movement. So just getting started makes a huge difference. And the other thing I've also learned on this journey is that where God, he will provide. So once you get moving,
Yes.
doors open that will lead you to the next step, that will lead you to the next step. And, as those things open up, just remember to create your boundaries and to stay balanced.
Yes.
Because as soon as you get started, there are going to be obstacles in your way that want to derail you.
Yeah.
So I thank you so, so much. This has been
you.
wonderful. We're going to be BFFs offline, you guys. So hopefully she'll be coming back. But Dr. Zoe Stallings, medical director, owner, operator of the Lust Clinic, a
Thank
fellow
you.
Harian, I thank you. I thank you so much. And for those listeners, please share this with someone, especially if you're in the area, the Greensboro, High Point, Triad, Winston-Salem, Burlington area, because I know you all need the care that she is providing in the way that she is doing it. She's telling you the truth and she wants the best for you. So you all please reach out to her.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Zoe.
Thank
Listeners,
you.
I'll see you on another episode of Office Visits with Dr. V.